Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Shadowverse. Starting a little bit late today, just overslept, so yeah, insomnia is still a big deal. Today is Friday, September the 11th. We don't need to go into any further details on that date, I don't think, covering video game news and news. Let's see. Well, for the accountability section, the good news is I played exactly one episode of Battleship Brigade. It really is just so off the rails as far as a game now. Like, you're supposed to be doing an Iron Chef spin-off kind of lighthearted cooking game with a match 3 puzzle gameplay mechanic and a hunting gameplay mechanic. And they have now spun the story and been so overly focused on the story that they were playing as a completely different character, basically showing a B plot of events. They've rewound back in time, and I'm now chasing bandits as a different character who stole like a special food ingredient I needed to cure my sick wife as this new character. It's just like off the rails as far as, hey, this was supposed to be a lighthearted cooking game. It honestly has very little cooking in it, and in this last recording I finally had to just give up and show the intro video, which is a little harder to set up than what I would like. Well, it's really one setting, just to show the dishonesty, and you really can't call it anything else. Swordcraft or Bloodcraft in Arena? Which do I have a better chance of winning? I guess Swordcraft. There's just a dishonesty and false advertising as far as the 30-second intro video that is highly polished, highly animated, and what the actual game is, where characters have just a 2-frame walking animation and their lips don't move when they talk, and it's just dialogue that's half the time voiced but half the time isn't voiced. Backgrounds are often unfinished, and even if they are, even if you could claim they were finished, they are drawn in like this pastel art style that I can't really agree with. Like, as for a video game, I won't say immediately that it's just it's just bad drawings, because I'm not 100% sure on that pastel art style, but it definitely does not work for video games. And if I said that was the good news, actually that was the bad news. The good news is I'm almost finished with my project of converting a suitcase, a briefcase, a like very old plastic hard case suitcase, briefcase. It's not a suitcase, it's a briefcase, into a mobile IT guy's computer setup, with a lot of other equipment also integrated into it, and it overall looks pretty good. Now, there's some things always to be learned. First of all, I would say, if you're going to get pluck and pull foam, measured 3 or 4 times before you order, because I got a square piece of pluck and pull foam, and the suitcase is rectangular, so there really wasn't enough. The good news there is I plucked out so many of the middle parts to actually have room for the equipment that there is more than enough left over. But yeah, it would have been better to have one consistent, like bigger size, like a much bigger size that I would have had to rip the edges all the way around in 4 different corners, because the rigidity on the pluck and pull foam falls apart fairly quickly. You're really not supposed to pluck anything that doesn't have at least 2 squares. Basically, the foam is kind of pre cut. What was that when you have paper that's already perforated so that you can tear it? The foam in a 3D way is like that, and you need at least 2 of the squares side by side to have enough of rigidity and just enough foam cushioning, really. Also, it doesn't seem like foam is the easiest thing to glue. You need like a fabric spray adhesive from what I can tell, and I'm trying just Elmer's glue, and I've left that overnight to see if maybe that will dry, but it definitely did not feel like it was drying because the foam is so porous. Like finding a glue that would be the right kind. You could also hot glue it, I've heard, but then you're going to probably have some fairly rigid connections there, just crunchy glue. And I'm probably going to have to glue the whole thing to the case if I wanted the full firmness, which kind of stinks. Or at the very least glue it to the free base that it comes with. But what I got was 2 inches tall, and it would have been a lot smarter to get 2 1-inch tall sets of pluck and pull foam. That way I could have removed everything that has any kind of lip around it, which the Raspberry Pi case that I have definitely has a lip around it. So I would have been able to remove the top half while keeping the bottom half, and it would have saved me a lot of time. As it is, I'm just using a really sharp scissors, and I'm getting fairly good with it, fairly good results, but it's not super smooth, and I don't know if you could take foam and put it on a band, like a sanding machine, and get something to be flat and level that way, or if it would just tear it up. It would probably tear it up. You could certainly have a hot knife, and if this was something you were going to do quite a lot, having a project like this with a hot knife makes sense. But then also I would say there's kind of a good argument towards towards even getting like a laser cutter and using a laser cutter to cut not pluck and pull foam, but just actual solid core foam. I guess it would really come down to if this project was supposed to be like a repeatable project. So far, like, it's mostly repeatable. There's the only thing that's would be a little bit different is just based on like what equipment you have, or what equipment is available. I was having quite a hard time with the Raspberry Pi 2B+, which I think what I did, if I'm going to guess, is I think I accidentally triggered a one-time only poly fuse inside the Raspberry 2B+ at some point, telling it not to overclock ever, or over voltage. Not overclock, but overvolt. Which I think for my specific Raspberry Pi 2B+, that one specific piece of hardware, that was a mistake, or it could just be a case that I have like a dud. But yeah, with a 7-inch touchscreen connected to it and in the same power circuit as a small amplifier circuit with 2 stereo speakers, and the stereo speakers themselves, they sound nice when you're hearing sound, but they are crackly. There is definitely some room for perhaps putting some ferrite cores or something on the wires, cutting the wires down quite a bit to get rid of the noise. It may not really matter because now that they're in this like plastic case, you may not hear the crackles that much. Also, it is I think it kind of reverberates quite nicely inside the cases. Of course, also those speakers are just hot glued down inside the case, so they could go loose and rattle around fairly quickly. But to fix the lightning bolt error that kept coming up saying there's not enough power, I tried everything. I tried overclocking it to say, hey, just give it more voltage so it doesn't complain. I tried underclocking it, and nothing worked. Sometimes that even stopped it from booting completely. But at the end of the day, I just determined that the best thing I could do is intentionally just turn off the warning and ignore it. Like, leave everything at the default setting. Don't try to overclock anything, and just ignore the errors and move on with my life. And see, inherently with this battle station is, I think, what they call them, concept of having a Raspberry Pi computer that you can just carry around with you. Inherently with a lot of these projects, it's the joy is in the building, not in the actual using. Like, this would be an amazing briefcase to be able to use to run around and do IT jobs. Am I personally ever going to run around and do IT jobs? Probably not. Even if I was, I'm not sure that this specific case would be the one that would be a day-to-day usage case. I'm trying to put a lot of tools, which, like, as far as extra cords, like older USB connectors and a couple HDMI's and power plugs and things like that, all of those, like, I'm at the point where I kind of have two of everything, accidentally through losing things. So I'm trying to use as much of like, put as much things in this battle station that would be a new location to kind of have everything in one place. Trying to gain more organization, which is always a difficult task, because yeah, there's definitely problems. That I have several plastic drawers full of several AV equipment connection cords that, in all realisticness, do I ever need an S-video cord, or am I just hoarding it? Do I need RCA cords? You probably would want to hold on to those, because on rare occasions those still show up. But everything has gotten to HDMI at this point that you can certainly just put your foot down and say, hey, no, we're only using HDMI. Every other cord can go away. On the other hand, like power plugs and transformers and adapters, it kind of makes sense to hold on to those, even though you're going to just have a huge pile of them. But yeah, I'm definitely not from the mentality of like the apartment lifestyle, where people just don't ever have anything in general, and they just get rid of things very quickly. And that's kind of funny from a mental perspective too, because like, I don't consider myself a non-flippant person as far as things. Like, I get things and then I get bored with them and get rid of them in a relatively short amount of time. Now, there are definitely things I have kept and kept precious to me, but a lot of things also just fall out of favor. But they're definitely, when you start thinking about the apartment lifestyle as I'm describing it, as somebody who literally has no garage, who literally is living out of 800 square feet or less, There has to be just a massive amount of, I don't own anything, I don't buy anything, I don't keep anything ever.
Let's speed things up.
But also, I personally just work at a grander scale than most people too. Like, I think a lot of people do have like their favorite 10 DVDs, and that's it. And if it weren't for my anime collection, I would still probably be closer to 100 DVDs of things that I want to keep. Now, in retrospect, had I known that it would have become such a easy thing to just pay $10 to Netflix and have a collection, oh, well, it's $12.50 now a month to Netflix, but to have a collection to a bunch of random bad TV and movies, and with some random good ones mixed in the mix, there might be a reconsideration there. On the other hand, like, the DVDs I have are kind of standout things too. Like, for instance, the very old comedy show Get Smart. You're not going to Get Smart on Amazon Prime or Netflix, as far as I know. If you're going to get it anywhere, you're probably going to get it on something like CBS All Access or Seinfeld. You're not going to be able to watch all of Seinfeld in order with director's commentary owning on Amazon or Netflix. So if those are things that you want to always have the opportunity to watch, then having those few standout things, the Twilight Zone also, like, you're not going to be able to see the very last episode of the Twilight Zone pretty much anywhere. Again, maybe CBS All Access, and maybe this all boils down to a lot of CBS properties from the old days before CBS became garbage. But yeah, there are just small collections like that, and then you run into Disney Vault things. Certainly, the Studio Ghibli are the kind of Disney Vault things that I want to get all of those on Blu-ray, and I don't have all of them, but I do have some.
Should have been quicker.
And so there is there's still some argument to that, depending on what you watch. Like, but yeah, Friends or The Office, things like that. If you're watching the kind of basic stuff, I don't think you actually need the complete box set. But then again, if you just love Friends, if you just love The Office, owning a box set still wouldn't be that big of a deal. And even the Friends box set probably is only talking 40 DVDs at most. And if it's all on Blu-ray, if they have a Blu-ray version, I imagine you'd get it on less than 10 Blu-rays. Banish.
I'm waiting to get up close and personal, darling.
And then destroy.
It won't be long now.
I have your heart in my sights.
This is our
Then
way out.
attack. Alright, so that's, I imagine, enough setup. Let's talk about the video game news. I'm still waiting, as I'm wrapping up the Battle Station project, I'm still waiting for a power supply for my new computer. But I really need to finish, I need to finish quite a few things. At least Battleship Brigade, before I can transfer over to using my new computer to stream or record. See, this deck I've built only works when I played the one amulet that acts as a commander.
Your defeat was foretold.
So, yeah, let's go through the news and just wrap up this Friday. Fridays are always kind of slow. I would like to know a way to speed up Fridays, but I don't think there ever is going to be a solution to that. The easiest way to fix Friday streams would be to literally get 4-day work weeks. Because then Friday would be the new Saturday. Let's see. Well, then let's guess we have to do this. Rush.
It takes a thief to catch a thief.
Okay. And that. So yeah, let's just, particularly since I started late today, let's just go through the news and then wrap up. Sorry, I'm chewing on ice. I did go through and finally do the daily quest that was just hampering me in general. I was running into this challenge to win 5 games in solo and on the main story in Shadowverse, and I spent some extra time doing that. And there's definitely cleanup. I could click the button and probably try and get one more daily quest that's centered around that idea, but I think it is probably easiest and best just to move forward and always have daily quests that are centered around playing ranked games. You get more gold, but you get a higher challenge. They are asking for like 4 or 5 wins in ranked play, which, if you're playing ranked anyways, trying to get up the ranking and just win score, then that makes sense. How did this person get their health so high? I thought they were way lower than that. Maybe that was the previous game. Alright, well, this, and then this, and then can't do that. This thing is just gonna keep on doing damage to me, like 1 extra damage each turn.
So this is my end.
You see, all this character has to do is just keep things going. Storm to do 4. 2, 3. TechRaptor has an article. Aiden Pierce returns in Watch Dogs Legion. Aiden Pierce, I believe, is the first character in the first game, which the Watch Dogs Legion, I guess, is just the second game in the Watch Dogs series, right? There wasn't a Watch Dogs 2 that was snuck in there and I just forgot about it. It kind of makes sense to me as one who's just generally not paying attention to the coverage and the teasing of Watch Dogs Legion, that you needed a basic character. No, Watch Dogs Legion is the third game in the series, because we've already had a second game. Yeah. So, yeah, it seemed kind of obvious you needed a main character that you played as to start off with. That didn't, because you're gonna go through these patterns in which you find somebody, you decide whether or not you want to recruit them into your hacking group, which the idea of just an ever-growing hacking group is kind of ridiculous. If anything, I would think it would be very loosely affiliated small groups, not just one giant group of what they're of DedSec that just grows and grows and grows. Because it does, with a lot of the coverage, feel like almost everybody in the UK could be turned to the hacking group side, and then there would just be no bad guys in the story at all, or you could literally just have an open election and vote out whoever the bad people are, and I don't even know really who the bad people are. It's probably some evil corporation. But yeah, it did seem like you needed some default character that you would play as, and it kind of feels like after that default character you will then recruit somebody new, and as long as you're capable of continuing to play as that new person, they probably just recruit the next person if you want to switch characters, or you might be able to just play the entire game as that one recruit. It's kind of a weird game design, certainly, because you're since they're so obsessed around this gameplay mechanic of you can play as anybody, that that pretty much guarantees that nobody will be interesting or that interesting or well written
How's everyone doing tonight?
compared to just a standard single player game where with a standard character or as Aiden Pierce. It's kind of ridiculous. He has this like whole Watch Dogs logo hat on him, and this guy does look fairly fishy, pretty much all covered up. And yeah, I don't think Aiden Pierce was liked that much, and that would have been a good reason, in my opinion, for them to have gotten rid of him and not focused on him. Whereas normally I think they would have probably just tried to continue to push the same main character. There was a Ubisoft press conference, so a lot of news today will be off the Ubisoft Forward presentation. They also put a standalone separate apology as kind of like a counter to the argument that was done in the previous presentation, where there was a standalone statement, although maybe not an actual apology in the previous time. There's two ways you could certainly look at the standalone apology. Do we really think Ubisoft's CEO and the people in charge who did or allegedly did all these horrible things are sorry or care at all? No, of course not. It's a soulless corporation. They just want to make money. But then is it also fair to just immediately doubt anyone's a corporation or a person's attempt to apologize, or come at it in a spirit of in a spirit of anger or disbelief? Because I could certainly put myself in the shoes of, like, perhaps needing to apologize for something and then apologizing, and then that person being an SJW and going, no, you didn't apologize the right way, and that's inherently where the concept and the truth of the matter is. You should just never apologize for anything, because it's pointless. People that want to be mad will be mad. People that don't want to care won't care. If Trump has taught anybody, taught the world anything, it's you really should just never apologize at all. It's a stupid thing. And I'm a big fan of like Bar Rescue, and the main guy, John Taffer on Bar Rescue, he's kind of the exact opposite of that. He will apologize quite a lot. He will tell other people to apologize. So perhaps he knows something in business. Well, of course he knows something in business that I don't know, but there is, I think, maybe an argument towards apology, but I don't. Maybe that's in business. Maybe that's not in politics. In politics, you never apologize. So yeah. What can you really do when a corporation apologizes? You take it as spoken. Take it as said. Like, evaluate whether or not that really changes your desire to purchase anything. Should your desire to purchase something from this corporation ever have changed in the first place, depending on what was done and whether you want to support that corporation or not. I mean, there is definitely a good argument in this case specifically to just never buy another Ubisoft product. Like, that argument does make sense. See whether we want to do evolve. Let's not evolve at the moment. On the other hand, if you are going to take that path of I'm never going to buy a Ubisoft product, you should definitely take it because of either their bad products or bad business policies, or the actions that their employees allegedly did, and realize that you are punishing all the victim employees also in that case. Jesus. This is just wrecking me. Oh, I kind of hate when this happens, but I kind of love that this can happen too. I just hate the fact that I'm not doing it, really. But it is kind of ridiculous to just reject apologies and stay mad just because it is separate advertisements. If you were going to go to like the Old Testament way of you're supposed to take your brother aside, your friend aside, and tell them that they're doing something wrong in private, and that, on the flip of that thought, would also mean that in the Old Testament way, in which the Bible says you're supposed to apologize to people, the first step is to do it in private, in kind of its own separate situation. So that the flip of that would be the point where also the person who's doing something wrong could apologize. So it would be fairly ridiculous at that point if you took your brother aside, according to Old Testament logic, and I think this is a probably sound way of doing things. If you took them aside, they apologized, and you said, no, that your apology just to me in private is not good enough, I need a public apology. That really smacks as just hostility and ridiculousness, and I think that's where a lot of these complaints are. Like, it has become very in vogue to hate Ubisoft, whereas these actions have been going on for years, and they the video game journalists have not been willing to speak about it, or they've been incompetent enough to even find out about it. And now they are just trying to get clickbait and hate bait views from it.
All right, troops, get ready for war.
And at a certain point, you just need to drop it. And of course, the Bible does say, if you take your brother aside and you say, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Often this was based on like biblical things in the Old Testament that just controlled all action pretty much, and there was lots of things that were considered unacceptable to do.
This is our way out.
If they refused to listen or refused to do it, then you were supposed to go get the rabbi, the priest, and then it was just you and the priest, 2-on-1, telling him, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And then after a certain point, that's when the shunning kicks in. After you've put in 3 or 4 good efforts to spare the person embarrassment, correct the unacceptable action, but at a certain point there is the shunning, and that's effectively what this is. It's a modern concept, a modern take on the old school concept of shunning, in which just all of the Jewish community themselves would effectively excommunicate, to use the later Catholic term. Excommunicate the offender, the person, the corporation in this case. And yeah, I don't. The only real solution here is the thing that they don't want to do, which is have the CEO, the people in charge in general, leave the company. And that's really what should happen. Is he should step down because this happened on his watch. He is making a lot of claims which might have felt valid, that he didn't know, that he was ignorant, but it kind of doesn't matter. It happened on your watch. You were the one in charge. If you're gonna claim authority as the CEO and be the person in charge, you at a certain point just need to fall on the sword and say, yeah, I was ultimately responsible for this. I dropped the ball. I turned a blind eye. I did not allow for there to be an HR that would come to the CEO, whereas, and this is probably a great example in general for running any company, is that the CEO, the person in charge, the main person in charge, needs to get some kind of report for every report that goes to HR. Like, he needs to know, even if there's a report against the CEO himself, he needs to know that there was a complaint. And maybe even then you anonymize it and you say, a member of the board has been accused of this, this, and this. But that there probably should even be legal requirements that something like that happens and is done. The idea that you could potentially claim ignorance is not acceptable. It should be impossible. I'm sure we've seen plenty of banking fraud shenanigans that have happened too, where the board, the CEO says, well, we didn't know that this accountant was doing this. It's like, you're in charge, you should know. And see, that's kind of inherently the problem with limited liability corporations in general, is that they are literally just made up imaginary people that are created just so nobody is ever held responsible for anything that's ever done. Which, if you were looking at a 2-year-old and he had an imaginary friend and he was blaming all of his actions on the imaginary friend, you would not give that any weight. If anything, you'd maybe have the 2-year-old put in therapy. But somehow, that same mentality flies in a corporation. It's ridiculous. Anyways, I'm getting into a rant as I'm continuously just losing in the arena. It is really just going to be that. And I'm really just going to be so swamped. I'm never going to be able to find enough time to build enough decks with the cards that I have. Probably a month or two away from the next expansion. At that point, we'll open 100 packs or so and get a leg up on the next expansion that would then give me some more hype and more reason to rebuild rotation decks. Moving on with the news, we have Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege announcing a big next-gen update. Okay, they've been pushing Rainbow Six Siege for a while, and in all fairness, I think it has kind of hit the level of like a Team Fortress 2, where it is just gonna always be playable, or Counter-Strike Go is also, I guess, a great example of that. I still don't think it's particularly the greatest of games, but it's not terrible, and Rainbow Six Siege is more notorious, I think, or at least 50% notorious for its heavy attempt at implementing heavy censorship into the chat and such, and there's been a lot of stories about that, depending on how you side with that. If you're actually playing the game, you might find that the community is particularly toxic, or you might find that it's just a bunch of SJWs that are running the show, and thus they are calling the community toxic. I mean, that's the community they've got, so they need to probably find a better mutual understanding with their audience. On the other hand, there was a story of, like in Counter-Strike Go, I believe, so many cheaters that somebody made bots to literally just hunt down and fight and kill all the cheaters who are using bots. So they're cheating to get rid of cheaters. And there definitely is a problem with the perception of a large amount of cheating in a game. For instance, Shadowverse here. If I thought for a second that there was even like 30% of people were cheating severely, and they had like automated scripts or bots playing for them, that would hurt the gameplay quite a bit. I doubt that is the case, and in all fairness, if I could automate and script some of this stuff, I might consider it myself, because these games do still tend to just be way too long, and there's definitely some things that could be sped up. But particularly in Shadowverse, the thing that was different compared to Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering Arena is you have perfect memory. Like, they give you a battle log to start off with while you're playing. So the only thing that you're missing here would be an overlay system that would just tell you what cards are left in your deck, and maybe the percentages of whether you draw those cards. And I guess those are two separate things. And you definitely aren't tracking the cards that the opponent played. Not that that would really help you in most gameplay modes. Alright, let's move on. Gamatsu has an article here. Action adventure platformer Golden Forest has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This kind of looks like a 90s anime style.
Guns can be kind of finicky.
Yeah, it is kind of an 8-bit looking game.
You would.
I've been playing some of these kind of games lately, so there's a possibility that I'd be willing to do that. Here we have a interesting character. Let's just hit play from there. Yeah, seems like there's a male character and a female character, and they're probably pirates. There's highest commander in your... Do we have a commander? We have a 3 commander. Yeah. Golden Force does look like it's being priced at about the average price of $60. It says £29.90. So it must be like a European game to start off with. I don't know if I'm gonna get deep into a bunch of 8-bit, 16-bit looking games, just because I've been playing the Shantae games. If anything, I probably should make an argument that I am not, that I shouldn't get up and close and personal with those, with playing a bunch of those games, because I'll probably have my fill, and I really should just play the Shantae games and the Monster Boy, Wonder Boy series and call it a day, because they're not gonna become my default jam of these are the types of games I want to. I'm still gonna heavily be more interested in playing point and click adventures and puzzle games, slower games, things that don't have that high chance of becoming a frustration platformer, which the danger of that is always in existence. So, Union Burst 8 will give +3, +3, and deal 5 to a person. Put this in the field. 2. Hit that. In the turn. Techraptor has Immortal Phoenix Rising, has a release date, which this does still kind of feel like it is a attempt at a Kid Icarus game, and I don't for a second disbelieve the thought that this probably was a speculation project that they were going to try and sell to Nintendo as a Kid Icarus game, or that this was just inspired by that. Which, in all fairness, Nintendo has not done anything with Kid Icarus in probably 35 years, so, or slightly less than 35 years. So, yeah, they really don't have any room to complain if somebody else makes something based off Icarus, and it is definitely a interesting enough myth that somebody should have done something around it a long time ago, and I imagine there had been some other attempts in some other games and they just weren't that great. Alright. Well, that was a pathetic reward for a pathetic playthrough. Let's open a pack. I'm getting down to the point where I'm maybe getting slightly fewer free packs. Maybe I'm forgetting to log in on some days. There's just going to be that inconsistency. really. And yeah, nothing new. And we know that. We know that we're not gonna really have anything new for a while. Excuse me. So Bloodcraft and then Swordcraft and then Bloodcraft and Swordcraft, and we'll just keep on playing until we get some ranked victories, and let's just get through the news. So Immortal Phoenix Rising actual release date though is when? December 3rd, 2020. I would argue that Immortal Phoenix Rising has the possibility of being a nice little fill-in game in between Breath of the Wild and whatever Breath of the Wild 2 type game gets created and gets released whenever something like that happens, because we do now know that that Zelda game that was announced just a couple days ago is really a Warriors game from the sounds of it, and so there probably is going to be a decent break between the two before Breath of the Wild 1 and Breath of the Wild 2, which we assume that there will be a Breath of the Wild 2, or there will be some Zelda game not in the Breath of the Wild series. We have a game on Steam here called Nico Arena. This is one of those low effort asset flip first person shooters. This is where you're playing as cat girls that are pretty terribly animated, and then you have either pre-bought or stolen, take your pick, pictures of anime cat girls that in no way look anything like the 3D models at all. Like this pink cat girl in a bikini, I think is supposed to be this character, and the bikini's not the right color, and in no way is the skin the right color. This is $1.39 English only. It's also early accessed. It's pretty garbage. Although
This is my home. You are my food.
I'm trying to think of a defense to make here to this. Yeah. The only thing I can say about these low effort games is that they still are acting nicely as canary in the coal mines as far as the level of censorship that happens on Steam, which is extremely low. They're still very much in their libertarian free-for-all mentality, which obviously makes them also a lot of money by allowing people to pay $100 to be listed.
Juicy.
But honestly, I don't see why a game like that should be allowed on Steam. If anything, it makes a great argument that Steam Direct games should be in a whole separate storefront and not treated the same as the big boys, which also would be a form of censorship to kind of downvote artificially some games. And there's never really been any proof that putting out these terrible games actually affects the average Steam player, because I don't think the average Steam player really is seeing these games.
Something nice.
So it then becomes just me and a couple other people that look at all the games that come out on Steam that sees these garbage games. But obviously it should be a Valve employee's job to look at all these games too, so I'm a little surprised that there isn't a Valve employee internally saying, hey, let's raise the quality a little bit more, or let's at the very least let's see. Seriously? I was thinking of something there, and I just went really quiet, and now I don't even remember what I was thinking of. Sorry. Oh. Yeah, I just had this great thought. If Valve every month, or every quarter, or every year came out and shamed games as kind of as a form of advertisement, even like the worst selling games on Steam, the worst reviewed games on Steam, if they had a monthly shame session there, perhaps they could put out the idea of like, here's the worst games that were reviewed on Steam, or the worst selling games on Steam. Here's examples of what not to do. There might be internally in Valve something like that, but it's, I think, something that would be an interesting idea. Followers, award, deal 2 damage. I can't even do that. Alright, well then we have to do this.
Dream for eternity.
And then do this.
Want to know and don't get the wrong idea.
Oh, darn it.
You wouldn't.
Let's see. So I need some way to damage this. And I played this, so now I'm only gonna have 6 mana for the rest of the game. And then if I had played this, I could have gotten rid of that. So we can do something there. But yeah, if Valve once a month shamed all these bad games and just said, hey, we see you, we know that these bad games exist, here's the stats saying that these games don't sell, quit wasting our time, quit wasting everybody's time, quit trying to sell these games.
Your time won't return to you.
That there might be a way of fixing these small problems with the listings of bad games on Steam. 1 damage to your leader, draw a card, and then restore 2 defense and play point. Alright, well, need to do this, and then need to do this.
I'll show you something nice.
And then that. And then I guess in the turn. And as long as we can keep on playing characters, this one will keep on taking damage. TechRaptor has an article. A Super Mario 3D All-Star restock is uncertain, which, yeah, that's what it seems like. This really feels like they literally just listed Mario 64, which I don't know if they really did much polish on the re-release of Mario 64 at all. And you need motion controls, I believe, for at least Galaxy, if not also Sunshine. It would make sense on Galaxy, it would make less sense on Sunshine, since both of these were Nintendo 64 titles. But yeah, it really feels like they just re-released this for a brief second as a way of advertising and as a way of saying, hey, this product is still on sale, to keep a copyright license. Like, that's really, I think, all they did. Why can I not defeat this? Can't be targeted by enemy effects, that's why. So this has ward, it has clash to reduce its damage to 0, and it can't be targeted by enemy effects.
You wouldn't.
The leader has the following effect. Reduce the damage to 0. This effect lasts until this follower leaves play. So they've created the perfect defense. There's, I think, no way to defeat this guy without banishing him. And then there's no way to do damage to this. So we are now just playing to see if this character runs out of cards. That's about all I can do. Either they get bored or they run out of cards. And we're going to run into some major problems very quickly around that. Alright, well.
Stay out of my axis reach.
They can do that much. And kind of nothing else. So yeah, the idea of a digital product not running out is really ridiculous, and what Nintendo is sadly making a great argument for is that everyone should just go pirate Mario games and Nintendo games, old Nintendo games in general, like, because they have really failed to do due diligence to serve an audience that would have wanted to play these old Mario games for probably 10 to 15 years already. And the second that they release something, it seems partially jaded as to the reason why the yeah, it feels like it is a bad reason that they've decided to list to sell these Mario games, and they've done it in such an incredibly Disney Vault limited scarcity, artificial scarcity way that you are just back to the same position that finally. So now all I need to do is defeat this guy, which will be hard, and we can go back to actually potentially winning here. There was something in that card, and he's surprised by that also. Let's see. Deal X to a random enemy follower. X equals the number of times allied followers have evolved this match. And this may not be enough. 2 damage and 3. 1 damage to an enemy. 9 I don't have, so I can't play, and I won't ever have that. 1 damage to both leaders. Strike. Okay. Let's see. 1 damage to both leaders. And that.
This is God's word.
And that's pretty much all I can do. But this guy can just hit me and win. Like, he bought himself so much time. TechRaptor has this article updated. Lower Xbox specs have some game developers worried. Now, the Series S seems like it is the non-4K version of the Series X. I think the processing and maybe the graphics are a little bit weaker than the Series X, but honestly, it still seems like it is the right deal for most people unless you have a 4K TV and a huge internet, or you're just going to buy games on disc, which also probably wouldn't be a bad idea to buy games on disc. So the article goes updated at 2:05 p.m. Microsoft has released a statement regarding the Xbox Series S specs, confirming that some of the feared game developers about its underpowered performance. The quote here is, Xbox Series X was designed to be the most affordable next-gen console and play next-generation games at 1440p at 60 frames per second, which is still higher than what I would have really thought it was targeting, because I would have said it would have been a very solid 1080p and just be done with it at that point, because let's be honest, there's still a ton of people that don't have that. To deliver highest quality background compatibility experience consistent with developers' original intent, the Xbox Series S runs the Xbox One S versions of backward compatible games while applying improved texture filtering, higher and more consistent frame rates, faster load times, and auto high dynamic range. So basically, the Series S is the improved version of the Xbox One S, which still to me seems like it's a great improvement and exactly what you would want. If you had an Xbox One S right now, maybe you consider not upgrading, or you consider specifically going from the Xbox One S to the Series X. But you may not really have a great argument to go from an Xbox One S to a Series S. But if you have nothing, the Series S is probably the right choice for you. And if you have an Xbox One X, these names are ridiculous, then I think at that point your best bet is to either stick with the One X or upgrade to the Series X. And it feels very much like the Series X is the only console that really will be considered the next generation console, and the Series S is a mid-tier console, which does put you in an interesting point, because they're effectively, instead of selling two versions of the same thing, they're selling two very different things. One that is a step up, it is more of a mid-tier PC in the Series S, while the Xbox Series X is a high-tier PC.
Hey, how's everyone doing tonight?
Let's see.
Elegant and perfectly stunning. You're done for.
So yeah, they are
No one gets past
different
me.
things, but
It's our way out.
I think it probably is a little disingenuous to say some developers are concerned about this. I think this mostly stands around as just a PlayStation versus Xbox, like dog whistling fighting and just ridiculousness. I imagine any developers that are concerned about that weren't planning on releasing on the Xbox anyways. There is also a story that I might as well just mention now, that they have confirmed that on the Series X, the top of the line one, you cannot remove the foot stand, which is like, I mean, it looks basically just like this. It's a black round thing without holes in it. It probably should have holes in it, considering the air is in part venting out or coming in from the bottom of the Series X. There's no real news around that though, because you weren't ever going to be able to turn your Xbox Series X sideways, not in any official recommended way.
It won't be long now.
So there is only one orientation that you were supposed to have ever even considered this, whereas this Series S probably can be rotated with no real problem. But we have, yeah, here you can see it is rotated, and very well they may intentionally more want you to have it rotated, considering this probably is a fan exhaust port, and there I bet there's an intake port on this side, so if you were going to put this on the shelf, you would have to put it in such a way so this bottom part was on the left side of your shelf, and then there would be open air on the side of it. But the Series X has to be vertical as far as I've seen, or you could rotate it and then you live with the fact that there's a foot on the bottom of it. It probably is a piece of plastic that with enough drilling and hammering you could probably remove it, but there probably isn't anything very pretty on the underside of that either. And that really, once again, comes off as just something that feels like it's people obsessing about things that don't matter in any way. Like, at least the argument of the Series S playing the previous generation, for lack of a better term, versions of games is a somewhat realistic argument, whereas I don't think the foot stand being non-removable really is. If you're going to make a complaint about the way the Xboxes look, there are better arguments around that, certainly. They both kind of stand out as these ridiculous items. Evolve or strike.
Forward march! Raise everything! Oh no you don't!
Moving on, TechRaptor has this Lego micro game, lets you learn Unity with virtual bricks, which, okay. Is this by Telltale, or if this is something for free you can do? Although, in fairness, I don't think learning Unity is a simplistic enough process. Now, as much as I've hated the Scratch programming language that is often pushed for little kids, there is a certain level of simplicity there that I think is necessary. This sucks. It sucks so bad that they can just play a bunch of these and you just have to have some way to destroy 4 or 5 amulets. Alright.
I'm waiting to get up close and personal, darling.
The officer, summon 2 knights. Just play that. That's about all I can do. and it's still not going to be enough because he'll just attack you. I don't think the dragging and dropping of Scratch is the right way to teach programming, and I don't think learning Unity, you can kind of see in this grayed out image, there's just a ton of stuff in Unity. It is very close to what I would say a Blender style interface, where the 3D animation studio Blender just has everything all over the place, even more than Photoshop, which Photoshop does put a lot of effort to try and hide a lot of the non-default settings. I would certainly say teaching kids to program needs to be something closer to a Python to start off with, then moving on to C++ and maybe C#, and then after they've kind of become an expert at C++ and C#, that's the point when you would learn Unity. And by the time you've done that, you're talking probably 6 to 12 years of education before they would be ready for Unity. The Unity even really should be like a college level thing, because it is on top of C++ and other languages, and you're just not going to have a good experience with this. And by the time a kid would have been old enough to program in Unity, in my opinion, they're probably not that into Lego, unless this is designed specifically for like programmers who are adult fans of Lego, that they played with Legos when they were kids, and then they took a bunch of programming classes and now they're getting back to it. This doesn't seem like it has anything to do with TT games. It's seems just to be Unity, and it may very well not even use the word Lego, because remember, Legos aren't even copyrightable anymore. The patent finally expired on them, so there's maybe the minifigs are still copyrightable, but I don't think so. I think even that's fallen out. It's an interesting idea. I just don't think Unity is the right language for that. And we have seen that TT Games has sort of tried to do something like that in Lego Worlds, and they really failed to support it or build enough of a draw around that they would make any sense. So very quickly, TT Games abandoned Lego Worlds and shoved in a single player experience into it in a game that the player base didn't really want a single player experience. Moving on, Project xCloud for the iOS and Stadia versions will be allowed under Apple's new rules. So according to Apple, I guess directly, you will be able to use xCloud and Stadia, whatever you can do as far as xCloud and Stadia on iOS. According to TechRaptor, Apple is trying to make it as complicated as possible. Alright, well, yeah, there's not a lot there other than to say some progress has been made, but clearly we all know that that Apple does not want to lose its 30% cut on any sales of any potential games, even games that aren't actually even playable on Apple products. But also Apple doesn't want to look like the monopoly that they very much are, so they're stuck between two conflicting interests there. In the lawsuit, I don't know if we actually talked about this, Apple is claiming that they are losing $27 million a month, I believe was the number I saw, by Fortnite and Epic being in breach of contract and them removing it. Now, it's a kind of circular logic. in the sense that
Break your chains and become the dragon.
the only real damages I think that they should probably be awarded if they're claiming 27 million a month would be a prorated on that first month amount. So if the Fortnite violated their contract halfway through a month, they should get half of the 27 million for that 1 month and that 1 month only. The idea that Apple can claim for damages for every single month that this contract goes on will be a harder argument to make than I think most people would be willing to buy and swallow as a concept. But yeah, I could see them being awarded damages for the whatever number of days that Fortnite breached their contract and put in that. But that may very well be just 1 or 2 days too, so that they may very well be fighting for 1/30th of 27 million. They may literally only get $1 million in damages at most. But yeah, if Epic pisses off the judge enough, he might be willing to do damages there. Although he probably wouldn't be willing to do damages in that way. He'd probably just want to do punitive damages, and there sometimes are some limitations on just punishing punitive damages, where they can only be 4, 5, 6 times, maybe 12 times even as high as the actual damages. So getting actual damages may just open a door to a bunch more punishing damages. But I could also see a judgment where the judge doesn't care either way and he doesn't want to put any punitive damages in. And that's just assuming Apple wins the court cases at all. We need to hurry up. Here we have a game on Steam called Who Are You, which this looks to me like it is a asset flip horror maze game. It's $1.79 English, nothing interesting here. Almost like a dungeon crawler. There might be an interesting story to waking up in a labyrinth, but I don't know if you want to wake up in a labyrinth or if you want to do like the Labyrinth movie and have somebody start on the outside of the labyrinth and have a goal and a reason as to why they're going to go through the labyrinth in the first place. Yeah, thinking about the Labyrinth movie, which is probably the best story as far as going through a labyrinth since the Minotaur. If there wasn't the goal of the baby being kidnapped, the main character wouldn't have gone through the labyrinth at all. In fact, the main character barely even went through the labyrinth to save her brother. Moving on, we have Divine Legacy, which looks like it's an RPG Maker game. Maybe slightly more polished than average, but yeah, it doesn't look like there's anything really worth idolizing here. It's $11.99 English only. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything worth playing. Reduce all its damage to 0. Sure.
Don't stop singing until there's world peace.
Here's the Game of Sutra article. We've talked about this before. Ubisoft CEO issues apology for past misconduct ahead of Ubisoft Forward event. Let's see. Video was shared on Ubisoft's Twitter. Is there anything? The exact quotes here. This is where you should get around. This is kind of a great example of a kind of story. You should get around what Game of Sutra is saying and just listen to what is actually being said by the person and then make your own judgments as to whether it's a sincere apology or is as sincere of an apology as you're ever going to get from a corporation that you know they don't really care. Like, no duh, they don't really care. Corporations only care about money. That's always been the case. There we go. So, I, taking personal responsibility, am truly sorry to everyone who was hurt. We have taken significant steps to remove or sanction those who violated our values and code of conduct, and we are working to improve our systems and processes. A very generic quote there, but definitely the right sentiment. We are the start of a long journey, says Gulmon. Real change will take time, but I'm determined to do everything in my power to ensure everyone at Ubisoft feels welcome, respected, and safe, and to rebuild the trust and or teams, fans, and players have in us. I think that's supposed to be R, and they've put a typo here. Now, inherently, we get back to the idea: should Guillermo just fall on his sword and be replaced? Because there is also that argument to be made that if he was to do that, if he was to just fall on his sword, would that guarantee that there is a new person that would come into play as a new CEO and actually make changes? Or would it just start a whole new cycle where a new CEO could come in and do whatever he wanted and not really make any changes and just try to bury and cover everything up? Because that is also a possibility and a danger for a scenario like that. It's not like there's this large collection of fixer type CEOs that come in and fix corporation cultures. At a certain point, it really just boils down to needing to fire almost everybody and start a whole new company. Which, at a certain point, maybe that is how this all will follow, is that a lot of Ubisoft employees had planned from day one or will plan to just go start their own corporation, and maybe that'll be the talent getting split to multiple player bases. And at a certain point, maybe in corporations, that's exactly what should happen, is that businesses should just be limited in the amount of success they can have individually, and that they need to split up. When you look at like Amazon.com, if Amazon.com had been really good at selling electronics and books, maybe there should have been a limitation there to say, well, Amazon.com is just books, and they have to go by a different name and a different corporate structure and different people to sell electronics, and instead of just this one-stop shopping. And at a certain point, maybe it should have been a situation where Amazon.com was just really good at inventory and payment processing, or just really good at inventory, and there would have been 5 to 10 different websites that were all powered by Amazon.com's inventory system. But Amazon wasn't making actual percentages of the sales or other things. Let's see, what else does it say? Real change will take time, but I'm determined, blah blah blah. So another quote here. Ubisoft stands for equality and respect for all, and pledges an additional donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. This kind of quote, this kind of oversight cannot happen. We are putting in place safeguards to prevent this from happening in the future. We condemn anyone using our games as a proxy for hate and toxicity. We fully support the Black Lives Matter movement. So only this last quote here even slightly goes, these last 2 chapters even slightly goes in a somewhat minimally controversial movement, direction. Let's see. Ubisoft still definitely has some issues, and I don't know which direction you really want to go with that. Like, you can be generous there, and I guess it's just each individual person's perspective. You can be generous and think that this CEO is probably like most CEOs, and the fact that he just takes a paycheck and doesn't really do that much work and doesn't really know what's going on, and so he was honestly ignorant because of his just incompetence, which, let's face it, I think most CEOs are probably incompetent. He was honestly like ignorant of what was going on, and maybe if you give him that much credibility, maybe you also then are willing to go the next step and say maybe he honestly wants to fix the problems, so maybe you shouldn't fall on his sword. And that's really what this all boils down to, is the people that are going to be mad are always going to be mad no matter what happens, so their opinions are not valid. What it really just comes down to is, does this person deserve a second chance or not? Or is this one mess up that has just snowballed, and this large group of mess ups that has snowballed and felt like one big mess up? Do they deserve a second chance, or should they just hang for it, as it were? And at a certain point, it really, I think, just comes down to how willing are you to give someone a chance, and how willing are you to forgive. And honestly, I think there's definitely a argument to be made that a lot of people are not willing to give people second chances, or even first chances, let's be honest. And there's a lot of people out there that are just not willing to forgive people for anything ever, and they just are hateful people that have nothing in their heart but anger and hatefulness. Do I want to kill this guy, or do I just want to go ahead and kill that?
What a troublemaker!
Next, we have a game called Angry Toys on Steam. This is one of those horror asset flip games with creepy toys running around. We've seen a lot of these. $1.19. Claims to have full audio in all 29 languages. Yep, that's one of those games that should be red flagged when you're claiming to have full audio in 29 languages.
Drunken dream must end. Angels don't stop.
So yeah, nothing there. Checkcrafter has Ender Lily's Quietus of Nights as a brand new publisher's first game. Okay. 2D horror and curses. This definitely looks like it might be a cell phone game. It definitely feels like one of these darker, kind of creepy, they tend to be Asian stories where you have a girl who's supposed to like represent purity and vulnerability, and then you have a bunch of creepy imagery around them. Like, it is kind of the Alice in Wonderland concept taken to A new extreme. Okay, new game coming out. When? Let's see, do they even have a date? Winter 2020 for PC and consoles. If your leaves defense is less than this, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. That won't work. 4 damage. That won't work. That. In the turn. Here we have on Gamatsu a game called World Witches United Front. Has a debut trailer. Pre-registration now available in Japan. World Witches. Apparently the series World Witches has changed names. It's I guess Crossing Strike Witches and Brave Witches, which I guess there had been a sequel to this anime with the anime cat girls with jets on their legs flying around, representing like bombers and flying planes of war. King of Valor. Summon the bat with ward. 4 damage. Can do this. And then can do this. And then you can do that much. And then you've lost the game. Yep. Well, this must be, as an anime, somewhat popular. It was really popular a couple seasons ago, certainly, but it must be somewhat popular in the fact that it's still getting cell phone games and gacha games, and it's still somewhat succeeding compared to here, where I am not succeeding at all. Here. Is there some default decks? Let's just play some default decks. We're making such a bad experience here as far as actually getting wins. I really have hit a point where I may have built worse decks than what the default is. Moving on, we need to hurry up. First-person horror game, The Origin Blind Maid, announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I saw this thumbnail and thought this was a like Blair Witch game, but apparently not. The trailer's slowly zooming out on a face here of a character. So if it's Origin Blind Maid, that neck is too long. Is the blind maid in a creepy house, or is she the creepy element? That's the part we're not sure about. What can we say about it? Really? Is there any actual date? First quarter 2021. A horror game. Horror games are a dime a dozen, and often pretty bad when they actually get released, but that does look slightly interesting, to say the least. Speaking of looking interesting, we have here a game on Steam called Omno Prologue, which looks pretty, but of course it's a prologue for another game. Yep. Looks like there might be something here, but then you also have a lot of emptiness in these screenshots, so it might be a very walking simulator game. Whereas if we look at Omno, it seems to be able to fly, and the screenshots are all the same. there might be something to them though. We'll keep an eye on it. No reason to put it on the follow list yet though. We are running into more and more situations where by putting demos and prologues or whatever they want to call them on Steam, people are getting those first impressions to a game and bits of more advertisement, but it doesn't really work. Like, compare the idea of the Dune trailer that came out. Now, for fans of Dune, I imagine they're super hyped about that. They've probably been super hyped for the past couple of years in which the Dune movie has been announced and talked about, or at least somewhat carefully hyped about that. But it does seem like the Dune trailer is getting a lot of attention, whereas a prologue, a demo, something that's actually interactive and probably a lot longer than any TV trailer, just cannot get that level of attention on Steam or anywhere else, simply because there's just way more games and way more better things you can do with your time. A trailer can be an ad on YouTube, and the Dune trailer has been, and you'll have to watch, they'll force you to watch the first few seconds, 15-30 seconds of it, whereas a prologue requires you to actively download the game, then actively play the game, knowing that you're not going to get a complete experience, and that's just a high requirement that most people are not going to be willing to spend their time on. Moving on, I don't know if this is real story or not. The Sims 4 players find a way to ship Rydo and their own creations. Rydo being the Kylo Ren and Rey merged together as a couple, not merged together as one. Although, which one of these is supposed to be Kylo Ren? Is this him? Because this looks exactly like Rey. It seems kind of like a weird article for a TechRaptor to talk about, because it really doesn't matter. It seems like it's an advertisement. Seems like an advertisement for The Sims 4, and sadly it does seem like The Sims as a game has just now boiled down to being a game for weirdos only, and only weirdos only. They've been heavily pro LGBTQ, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they've just gone so SJW in that direction that it really feels like there's no other reason to play The Sims, and it feels like it is becoming for that community and only that community. Whereas, yeah, if you go back and think about The Sims 1, I think almost anybody would have been likely to play The Sims when The Sims 1 came out. But it is over-focused in one direction. I would also say Star Wars fans probably fall under that category too, in which Star Wars fans are over-focused on Star Wars. Although, also, I would say there's probably a huge difference between fans of Rey, of which maybe there's not that many fans of Rey and Kylo. That's not what I see on YouTube. I see a lot of people hating Rey as a Mary Sue. I see a lot of people hating Kylo as a kind of not important character in the long run of the new trilogy, and as a childish kid, at least in the first and probably second movie. So, yeah, they really aren't great characters, and I wouldn't be surprised if this whole article in itself isn't just like underground advertisement by Disney to continue to push the Star Wars reboot trilogy.
The void will be there for me.
Although I don't even know why Disney would spend the money at this point to try and do anything with this trilogy. They need to to move on, forget about it, and try again. Like, have a new trilogy. Here's what I would suggest for episode 10, I suppose, as it were, is first of all, have no hero at all. If you're going to have anything, you're going to have 3 relatively young actors that could potentially be the hero, and you're going to leave it up to a question to see if one of them becomes the protagonist and the main character, or you're going to probably be best just not having any character be the main character. That is in line with episode 4, because you had Han Solo, you had Luke, you had Chewbacca, you had Princess Leia. There's 4 or 5 characters in that first story. It is an ensemble cast, and that should be the focus, in my opinion.
It won't be long now.
And that was really not the case in the reboot movie. They heavily focused on Rey, and even in the first movie, and they completely focused on her in the next 2 movies. And then you need to tell a different kind of story, and you need to figure out how to tell a different kind of story that isn't just the same old stories of a Death Star type thing being built and then destroyed. You need to either create a new hero's journey or not use the hero's journey. Oh, oops.
No one gets past me.
I messed up there. Oh, whatever.
Tell no tales.
Think I can win anyways. You probably need to set episode 10 either thousands of years in the past or thousands of years in the future. I think you set it thousands of years in the future, and then you establish that even thousands of years in the future for the Star Wars universe still is not modern time, because Star Wars says a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I think you might tease at the end of episode 12 that a planet called Earth is discovered and mentioned. And that's probably as much as you should ever do. See, now this is just irritating. It's so irritating that a standard deck wins when everything else has been failing miserably. And we'll just play that default deck again. Yeah, you'd have to be fairly careful about moving the Star Wars universe and timeline to Earth, because it would almost have to happen at a certain point where, like, the Empire has finally decided to expand itself to Earth and conquer it, and if you were going to do something like that, you'd have to be very, very careful to first cover the Badlands and the Outer Rim, as it was mentioned in the Star Wars universe, and see what's happening there. So there's probably a good 6 movies you should have around the idea of the Outer Rim first and foremost, and set the story in the Outer Rim with different characters, different creatures, and only be in a region that has only barely even heard of the Empire. Introduce a new empire that is so big and powerful that it has literally just been ignoring all of the Star Wars galaxies and encircling it in an outer rim, which would be a sphere. Introduce like some giant unknowable creature get away from the Force, perhaps. Introduce something that's even stronger than the Force, or that's in parallel to the Force, or against the Force. And these are very generic concepts too, but they are different concepts. Something other than just repeating episode 4, which is what all they did for episode 7. And frankly, people didn't even hate the repetition that much, but it was noticed.
Raise your blade. Come get some.
Yeah, it's almost difficult to even remember that episode 7 was fairly well received after all the terribleness of episode 8 and 9. Alright, well, this game is not tagged as adult content, but I'm gonna just tag it that myself. There's a game on Steam here called Sweet Dungeon. Here, I'll quickly show the thumbnail, and you can see there's some badly animated anime girls with a lot of cleavage and stuff, and a lot of screenshots do imply that there's some nudity, probably somehow, but the actual game looks like a very low effort platformer. It's $1.79. It's English and simplified Chinese, so that would probably explain the censorship. I wouldn't be surprised if there is no easy way to uncensor it. But we are still seeing adult games on Steam. Not a lot of them. Not a lot of games on Steam in general. Next we have a game on Steam here called Truck the System, which looks like it is a physics kind of asset flip. Like high action racing, build your own tracks. Kind of like a Trackmania clone, I guess, is probably your best bet. It's $6.79 English only. I'm not seeing enough polish here to make this seem like it really is a good game, and one of course has to be careful to not mispronounce Truck the System, which obviously that there is an implication there that it is supposed to be the F word instead.
Can you dodge this?
I live by the sword.
Next we have AFL Evolution 2, which AFL is what, the American Football League or America's Football League? It looks like American football, but it's not the NFL. So is this... Yeah, I don't know who would be interested in that. It's $49.99 English full audio. I suppose it might be a case that there is maybe a possibility of a better experience playing an AFL game instead of an NFL 2K EA game, which is going to have all the problems built within of around the idea of
Dead men tell no tales.
lots of microtransactions, a lot of lack of polish. Now, I will say the this AFL game seems to be designed around not wearing as much padding, not as much contact, a lot more holding the ball, and maybe a little bit more even traveling. Kind of feels almost like rugby more than football. A lot more kicking. So yeah, there might be a bit more of an experience to playing football that way. Next we have a game on Steam called Escape from Polet. Says it's a point and click adventure, and I'm a sucker for point and click or adventures. Some of the graphics don't look amazingly great, but that may not matter. It's free. Let's see. Voices are dubbed in Spanish. So English, Spain, Spanish, a free point-and-click adventure game. This seems like, if I was to guess, probably a first effort from a game developer trying to learn the system, and he probably asset flipped a lot of the graphics. Interesting that somebody would be teaching themselves to make a point-and-click adventure, but not a bad thought, certainly, because that keeps the gameplay and the action slow and smooth, and you don't have to have a lot of animations, a lot of movement mechanics. Let's see. Do this.
Brother. At your service.
Do this.
It won't be long now.
This is the consummation of ninjutsu.
Do
How much is
this.
in it for me?
Can you dodge this?
And the turn. So, if this game wasn't free, I would put this on the follow list, but since it is free, I will just kind of see if Pedro ever creates another game, and if he sells one, I might consider covering it.
This wasn't worth it.
Now, this is a game that is a blast from the past. Impossible Mission 2, which I'm not sure there ever was an Impossible Mission 1. This game I bought as a unofficial, unlicensed NES game, and it says there was a Impossible Mission 1. And it is true to its name. It is like a one-hit death. It is incredibly impossible. I may have rented this game, actually, not bought it. I spent at least a full 12 hours trying to beat this game and got nowhere with it. It was incredibly frustrating. It's not a particularly good game. You can see it has very CGA-like graphics here. It's from Epic's. It's $4.24, and it's not really worth that much. And I don't know if this is Epic's in general as a company putting something they don't own the license to. I'm not sure if anybody owns the license to this, or if this is just old games. The only other game that they've released was like California Games, and I dismissed that as, yes, was probably another low quality NES game. And this one's selling for $4.99 also. So I'm going to put that on the follow list, but I can't really recommend anyone actually play it. Like, even if you have memories of it, it's unless you were just really, really good at it. And one of the most interesting things I think about it, unless I had some kind of like bootleg cartridge of the game, which might also have been the case, there was a little bit of that floating around, but I don't know how I would have found one. You literally put it in the NES, but in the original NES you would put a cartridge in and then you would press it down to lock it into place. And for some reason this game would not play when you put it down, and you had to leave it up and not lock it in place for it to run, which is kind of crazy. And the instructions specifically said that this was not for use in a Nintendo Entertainment System. Apparently it was on the Atari ST and ZX Spectrum, and then the NES. So I got the probably latest version. It is possible that on the Atari ST or the ZX Spectrum, which it definitely has graphics that look like that, it was so much slower that the game was much more playable back then. It's also possible I was just a bad video game player back then. I would have been a kid, certainly. Next, we have a game on Steam called Zentron Attack, which just looks like a Asteroids clone. And this is based on an old game. I don't have any reference for that. It's 89 cents, English and Korean. I bet it isn't. I bet it's just a brand new game. And we certainly are going backwards and forwards on a lot of that, where you sometimes will see a game that is for like very, very old consoles, or looks like it was designed for very, very old consoles, and it's brand new, and then you see a game that is actually a release of an old game, and it's kind of ridiculous amount of research you have to do a lot of times for some of these older games if you want to even consider them. But the good news is most people can just dismiss them out of hand because they don't have any visual appeal. And for as much as I would like games to not all be about the graphics, there is a certain level of quality of graphics that is expected, and old games just won't have. Here we have a game on Steam that kind of falls with that idea, in that you have a game called Waste X, which looks like an asset flip game for PlayStation 2, with PlayStation 2 level graphics, but seems like it is probably a programming vertical slice attempt. I would have said very possibly a Chinese game, but it's English only. It's $2.99, and yeah, there's nothing here you'd want to really play. Let's see, do we want to evolve this?
Go! This world is cowardly creatures. My hands are tied.
Let's see. Here we have a troll that's a bunch of Asian characters. Comrade Trump's re-election. Here we have clearly a political joke game, English and Chinese. Of course, there probably needs to be a verification that when a game says it's in Chinese, it actually is in Chinese, and it isn't just putting gibberish Asian symbols on the screen. Because I wouldn't be surprised if a game like that actually was 100% made in America and just designed to be a troll game, that a false flag kind of operation, as it were, in a video game sense.
You won't wake up. Now close your eyes.
And we don't have a choice. We have to do this.
My life ends.
Didn't do this.
Salvation circuits malfunctioning.
Gamatsu has Jack Jian game introduction trailer, which is tagged as a shonen. No, not shonen. I think that's shounen opera simulation game, which I'm not 100% sure what a shounen opera is, but if I would guess, it is a very old traditional style of operas that are done in Japan.
What a shame.
Maybe I'm misreading it, and it is a shonen. And this kind of like trailer doesn't explain itself well, and it does seem like it is actually an opera singing thing. And I think I am confusing shounen, S-H-O-U-N-E-N opera with a different kind of opera that the Japanese do, not kabuki theater, but something else also on top of that. So, trailer doesn't really show us that much, which is typical. Little teases. Next we have a game on Steam called Crowded Blue Dot, which I don't know if you're supposed to be looking for a blue dot, or if Crowded Blue Dot means Earth, as in the Earth is a big blue ball. It looks like this is just a city, like, resource management simulator for 809, English, Korean, and Japanese. I don't see anything new or unique happening here other than just generic white blob characters walking around, which computers have enough processing power and visual graphics power that you don't need white blobs walking around, and you never did. Even in the days of like Warcraft 1, maybe you'd have less people walking around, certainly. Next we have a game on Steam called Wawa United, which seems to be something. It seems like frogs kind of platforming, and there's no video. Interesting. They really need to tell people that they have to have videos on Steam. That would be a very easy way to curate not a large percentage of people, but it would eliminate, I would say, 0.01% of low effort listings on Steam. It would save somebody some time annually, certainly, to just say, hey, if you're going to sell a game, you've got to sell a game with a video. Like, I see 4 players, I see heart bars. It seems like it's probably a 4-player beat 'em up, if I was to guess. 2 to 4-player frogs explore a gorgeous world built in the most impressive layer. It's $12.99. It's English, French, and Chinese. So take your pick on whether it's a low effort English or low effort French or low effort Chinese. Like, programming project would be my best thought as to what it really is, more than even a game. OpenCritic has an article here. The Control Ultimate Edition controversy continues after some players were accidentally upgraded, and then those upgrades were taken away. So, yeah. People are not going to be happy about that, certainly, because you just proved you could upgrade, not that there was really any question that you couldn't. But, yeah. People are not happy with the way they're doing that, and Control had decent coverage from the press and seemed uninterested in growing more interest and more love around the Remedy as a company, and so they've taken good press and they've turned it into bad press. There really was no reason to do that. Like, it just comes off as greedy. It just comes off as incompetent. And honestly, I would probably argue that a lot of the development of Control is incompetent. The generic random spawning of enemies and trying to make something that feels like they were thinking about having microtransactions in it, and making something that is half a linear experience but then has a ridiculous amount of side quests that a lot of players will just never see. It's not the most polished experience for everyone. There's a whole section of Control that I skipped over because the game didn't really force me to go in that direction, nor did I really have any interest in going that direction, so I just rushed to the ending and missed most of the mold elements of the game. Whereas any other decent game developer would have said, hey, no, the mold element is going to be the middle act of this game, and you're going to have to deal with the mold before you can move any further in the story.
How much is in it for me?
I live by the sword.
Let's go ahead and
It won't be long now.
hit this guy.
I faith in my blade. Take that.
OpenCritic has got Pilgrim vs. the World is coming back. We had already kind of talked about this. This is a re-release of an old game, and if anything, it's probably evidence that Ubisoft had less than they would like to have announced. There probably was something that they had planned on announcing that has been delayed secretly, and so they just had their lawyers spend the time to bring back an old game and get the license.
It all ends here.
Which I imagine the license is there. Probably is mostly around the comic book, with maybe a small percentage of it being around any kind of in-game music that they would have had to re-license the music. But I don't think Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is going to have any kind of real resurgence or anything like that, and it isn't really going to be an experience like playing the SpongeBob game where there's real fandom for SpongeBob. I don't think there's a major fandom for Scott Pilgrim still. Moving on, TechRaptor has Primordia developer Wormwood announcing a game called Strangeland. This is coming out in 2021. It's a point-and-click adventure game. It looks like it's weird and creepy, as many point-and-click adventure games are. So we'll look forward to that. It's the officer. Yes, so we can publish that. Then we can do that. Then that. TechRaptor has an article here. Tell Me Why is not available for purchase in 13 countries. Probably because one of these is like gay or transgender. One of these two twins are. Tell Me Why does seem like it is just another Life is Strange, not set in the Life is Strange universe, in the sense that they probably didn't want to give these characters give them any magical powers. From what I hear, they also have done a slightly better job they've done a slightly better job in making sure that the episodes come out very close to each other, so people don't lose interest in the game. But at a certain point, it really is just making the argument that the games should never have been episodic and games should never be episodic. And I think we are now at the point where we can admit that's the case. With the complete failure of Telltale, and episodic listings don't make any sense at all. We need to go back to what episodic games used to mean, in the sense that a sequel would have been episode 2. And sorry that I'm just going between Swordcraft and Bloodcraft, but that's all I can literally play right now. Like, all I can do is just fall and lose score, so I'm ranked to somebody worse, and then hope to get a victory to get the daily quest done. And my daily quests in particular are not aligned, and I feel like they're always going to be in that situation. And I'm going to end up logging in every day and training something out, and just never really
Time to get started.
never really being able to do all 3 daily quests, even if I wanted to. Alright, so the 13 countries it's not available for. China and Russians. Okay, that makes sense. China, Indonesia, Kuwait, Russia, Malaysia, Pakistan listed as South Asia, Peru, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Turkey, UAE, United Arab Emirates, Ukraine, and Qatar. Yeah, all of these are anti-gay countries that have, and a lot of which have anti-gay laws. And so, yeah, that's the reason. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if Don't Nod never even tried to get those games approved for sale, and they're just kind of being a little SJW-y by saying, yeah, these games are not available for sale in these countries that we were never going to try and sell them in anyways. Like, I imagine you could potentially make a secondary list of all of several other countries in which the game is not really available for sale also. Like, you could definitely probably find a large number of South American countries that don't have distribution networks or a market worth selling to because it's just not enough people, or like South African, South American. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more Eastern Bloc European countries where it's really not available for purchase. But yeah, that's the story for whatever that means. Next, Open Critic has Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake is on its way, and they show you a screenshot of the guy with the Sands of Time blade, the Prince of Persia character way in the background fighting someone over here, and then you have a female character in the front. This does explain a few things, because there was a slight thought that they may be re-releasing the reboot, the second reboot, not the first reboot. Sands of Time would be the first reboot of Prince of Persia, or they were trying to remaster the original Prince of Persia game, which that would have been interesting too. But no, this is Sands of Time, and in all realisticness, that is the right move. Unfortunately, this game is coming out in January 21, and it doesn't seem like they are really doing anything than a visual remaster, and so I don't think it really is a remake. Maybe they're going to change the gameplay mechanics and the controls. I think I just in the last sale actually got around to buying all of the Prince of Persia games, and now after buying them all, unless I get free upgrades, I feel like I probably am not going to spend the time to go and play them, because now we are on this path of, well, I could probably just put it off and instead focus on some other games, and then wait until they ever remade or remastered the entire trilogy.
I'm just getting warmed up.
Which, that is the speculative thought now. Certainly would be, Sands of Time gets a remake, well then all of the games in that series need to get a remake. And inherently they need somebody to be making a new Prince of Persia game series based on either a new character, a reboot, something, new generation. For something like the Prince of Persia series, you probably do need a situation yeah, you probably do need a world where you can constantly be set in this kind of Persian Aladdin style universe, even if 100 years or 1,000 years goes forward. The world should just not change that much, but new characters, new generations might be benefited.
You're tough.
Think I lost again. On September 9th, Apple said it would no longer allow users to sign in the Epic Games account. On September 10th, Apple said they will let you continue to use the sign in with Apple, giving an indefinite extension. So Apple apparently was either under some legal threat or decided that that was not a good move on there. I don't know how many people were signing into the Epic Store using sign in with Apple anyways, but apparently enough that somebody thought
You must
better
die.
than removing that.
Blossoms will reflect in your eyes.
I imagine if you are an Apple fanboy and that's all you use, you probably aren't using sign in with Google for anything. And as someone who uses an Android phone, there is a lot of times where it does seem slightly easier to sign in with Google, although in all honesty, I don't think it's a smart move. I think you should never sign in with a third party unless you're gonna, like, maybe pay with PayPal is about the only sign in thought I could think, is if you could sign in with PayPal because you're gonna pay with PayPal because you don't trust the website at all. But if you're gonna stick with any service, just signing in with a good old-fashioned email is as safe as anything else, which is to say not very safe. Next we have a game on Steam called The Old House, not to be confused with the TV show This Old House, which I think is still airing on PBS. This looks like an escape the room game. They're calling it a puzzle platformer. That is wrong, almost certainly. It is 64 cents, English and Russian. It's probably a low effort asset flip, if I was to guess.
My allies. My friends get past me.
Let's see. So, Prince of Persia Sands of Time will be coming to Nintendo Switch, and it originally came out in 2003, so you're talking a 17-year-old game. So there's only so much polish you can really do there. If you're not going to change the story, if you're not going to change the level designs or the gameplay, and I feel like the level designs and the gameplay are the parts that are going to fall apart. I think probably if you're going to reboot the series too, you probably need to have like 2 playable characters, one of them being female, and see what you could really do with that. There was a demo that was shown, and I don't know if it was I don't remember if it was an old demo or a new demo, but there definitely was a demo about a year ago showing the showing potential development for a potential new Prince of Persia game. But there also kind of needs to be a come to Jesus moment as far as Ubisoft and the developers of the Prince of Persia game, and they need to think, what is Prince of Persia after Assassin's Creed? Because Assassin's Creed was intentionally created to replace Prince of Persia and not have a Persian character, a Middle Eastern character, really be the main focus.
You are done for.
I shall overcome all by
Just
the
go ahead
Knight's Code.
do this now, I guess.
Nothing scary with allies
No one
by your
gets past
side.
me.
So, yeah. Is Prince of Persia going to be a running parkour game that somehow outdoes Mirror's Edge, which outdid Prince of Persia? Is it going to be a 3D platforming game, or a or that is more kind of arcadey than what Assassin's Creed was, which was more natural climbing on walls? It is also certainly worth considering the fact that that Assassin's Creed has now shifted drastically away from being what Assassin's Creed was, and its story has gotten ridiculous, I imagine it in the past people probably thought the Sands of Time story was kind of ridiculous, and the Illuminati Templar storyline in Assassin's Creed has far outshone the ridiculousness of that. But yeah, I don't know what you can really do there. There is a danger, certainly, about do you want to have a rebooted Prince of Persia series have the characters be actually Muslim, and do you want to mention that? Do you want them to speak in a Middle Eastern Persian language? Do you want them to quote the Quran? I think a lot of people probably would say no to that, and that's probably the right response. But then, at a certain level, then you just are continuing the issue of the propagating the fictional Aladdin mentality of what Persia was versus what in reality it was, or what in reality it is now.
I travel in search of the
And I imagine that you're best off just turning a blind eye to that. The attacking, the fighting in Prince of Persia, that's going to have to be very, very smooth, very quick, and that's going to take a lot of programming. The parkour is going to take a lot of programming. The time rewind mechanism is not actually that hard, and you could easily have just a frame buffer for that, and you could have quite a long rewind if you want, but that's assuming that's what you're going to get. Or you get away from the Sands of Time element, and then you have a Prince of Persia character that can't undo when he makes a mistake, and if you're going to do it that way, then you have to decide how do you correct for when a character makes a mistake. Do you just have no spikes and no infinite pits to fall in and die, instead just have flat floors at the bottom where if somebody falls they can climb back up? You have a bunch of perhaps ladders to get back to certain spots when you reach a certain point to checkpoint, or you just have a whole bunch of checkpoint systems and you just ignore the fact that most games have had checkpoint systems for this whole time, for a very long time. TechRaptor has another screenshot here of what Scott Pilgrim looks like. Yeah, this is in line with what the comic book looks like, so you do have a decent chance that the game might be better than the movie as far as a translation, but I just don't know if that's gonna translate into actual interest. Like the people that I think like Scott Pilgrim, the comic books, like them fairly well, but I imagine they have not gone back and reread them 2 or 3 times over the years. Like I like Watchmen and Sandman, but I could really only make a justification to going back and reading Sandman because it is incredibly long series and I've forgotten all of it. Also, I would like to get like the Lucifer series and read all of that, but I also have comic books still, even though I gave away almost all my comic books, and that may very well have been a huge mistake. Like there's still about 5 or 6 of them that I have that I haven't gotten around to reading, and I just never have any time for any kind of like peaceful, let's sit down and read. Like that's really just not me. I do all my reading in a much more active, I'm reading on a computer, I'm reading while audio is playing, and honestly I never got anything out of that. I imagine other people do, but I don't do single things, slow, quiet, peaceful things. I do things fast and usually multitask 2 or 3 times. I'm not saying I'm actually good at multitasking by any means, but it is what has become my way of doing things, and I can't have not seen a way to get around doing that. or find a different way to do things, doesn't matter. Moving on, TechRaptor has a turn-based CRPG called Solstice Crown of the Magistar, with the release date being set for October. What's CRPG? Chinese RPG? Maybe? Is that a Kickstarter campaign? Like, I'm really upset with Battleship Brigade being a Kickstarter game too. It definitely feels like they took the money and ran. I don't think C stands for Chinese. I think it stands for something else, and I can't ever remember what it stands for, unfortunately.
You are done for.
That's it for now.
Let's see.
Come get some.
Here
Nothing scary with
and
allies
here,
by your side.
and then the turn. We have a game from TechRaptor called Roller Champions coming in 2021, which seems like it is a skating kind of Rocket League type racing game. Yeah, this doesn't look particularly interesting. And it's another Ubisoft thing. It needs a lot more polish. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the pandemic is playing a big role in games not being released. But I also wouldn't be surprised, or released or announced. I also wouldn't be surprised if there's just a lot of other problems at Ubisoft at the moment, so a lot of games are very delayed. Like, here's a better screenshot of Roller Champions, and yeah, that just looks unimpressive. The Ubisoft Forward presentation in particular, since I think this is the second Ubisoft presentation since the cancellation of E3 this year, I think it probably is a great example of them trying to do Nintendo Directs when they really don't have enough things to really make in a Nintendo Direct. Right. So I can do this.
How much is in it for me?
And then I can do this. And I can do this. Here we have a game on Steam called Artificer Science of Magic, which looks like it's a little bit all over the place. It's kind of a top-down adventure game from the looks of it. It's discounted to $8.49. You know what? I'm gonna stop saying discounted, because that's just gonna save me time. The price is whatever it is at the moment, regardless if it's discounted or not. I'm gonna put this on the fall list. This very easily could be a bad game, a low effort game. It's just really hard to tell at the moment, so I'm gonna give it a follow. Maybe that's just because I've been streaming for so long that I'm running out of energy. Hit that.
Raise your blade.
And then hit play that.
How much is in it for me?
Come get
Do
some.
that.
All must come to an
Nothing
end.
scary with
that.
allies by your side.
Here we have Commander 85 launching September 3rd for Xbox One and PC, which seems to be some kind of game with a computer in front of the screenshot. Yeah, I suspect what this is well, I guess it's a murder mystery. I was gonna think that you were you were either playing a Commodore or you were controlling a computer that controlled like the nuclear launch codes. In the Cold War and find out the truth behind the Roswell incident is the subtitle. Well, that's interesting premise, to say the least. And it's so ridiculous. Gamma Sutra's website won't even stay loaded if you tell it to stay loaded.
Don't call me short.
Okay. Play that.
Raise your blade.
Iron my
Let's
fair
see
share.
if we
Nothing
can
scary with
do
allies
enough
by your
damage.
side.
TechRaptor has an article, Gods and Monster trademark fight with Monster Energy caused the name change. And that's why it became Immortals Phoenix Rising. And I would argue that Monster Energy probably should be challenged on their copyright of the idea of monster as a phrase. But it's not like Gods and Monsters is a great title that you should waste your money fighting around that. But yeah, monster is an incredibly generic term. I could see them deserving Monster Energy as a phrase, but not the phrase monster alone as a trademark. Next we have a game on Steam here called Lantern Bear. It's a frustration platformer where the bear is also holding a light source, which that only changes things slightly. It doesn't look amazingly polished. It's $9.99 English only. See, I don't know if I'm actually going particularly long today or if it just feels like it's going particularly long. Vampire the Masquerade Shadows of New York, which I think is the spin-off game for Vampire the Masquerade. Like, there may be 2 or 3 of these. This definitely feels very much like a visual novel though, and nothing else. But it's being rated very positively, and a good Western visual novel certainly makes sense. There's apparently a deluxe edition here that includes Shadows of New York art book, and soundtrack, so no real reason you'd buy the deluxe edition. It's English, it's not full audio. That's going to be a bit of a problem for a Western game. It's rated M for mature, which I don't see any sexual content tags. Alright, well, I'm going to put this on the fall list, and I think there is a good argument to be said as far as Vampires Masquerade. Of course, if you're going to also do this, then the Coteries of New York, which is a visual novel, is mixed and mostly positive overall, and the graphics look fairly similar, and so it really does start to boil down to how many of these visual novels around the Vampire the Masquerade series are really worth covering and playing versus the more standard RPG Vampire the Masquerades or Vampire Bloodlines series. There is this danger, certainly, unless you're big into playing the live action role playing of Vampire the Masquerade. You at best should pick and choose between the good and the bad games based on this. And at a certain point, we are close, I think, to running into like a Dungeons and Dragons situation where there's just going to be way too many things based on Dungeons and Dragons, and most of them are not going to be particularly good. I can see the beginning of the end finally. Here we have a game on Steam called Starship Commander Arcade, which looks like it's a shoot 'em up game. It's apparently made from Mass Effect, Tomb Raider, and Saints Row industry veterans, which could be anybody really. I feel like there's been Starship Commander games before, and this frankly feels almost like a live action video game that would have been for the Sega CD. Let's see. It's from a company called Human Interactive, which the only other thing they have is a documentary called Passions at All Cost. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but there's a problem here. This game is designed with speech as the primary input, and embedded microphone on your VR headset provides an optimal experience for Starship Commander Arcade. The same content is playable in non-VR mode, but requires a mouse and an external microphone. Yeah. Ooh, that sounds pretty bad. Like fighting a game that you're gonna have to talk to. Yeah, that sounds very experimental. English full audio, no other language supported. It is a seated experience that lasts 10 to 20 minutes, and it's $6.79. That is a hard sell. That is a really hard sell. And clearly it's designed for VR. But it's something different at the least. Like,
I did it. I won.
right. So we need now just 4 ranked matches. So now I can just go back to Forestcraft and play my Forestcraft deck. Gamatsu has an article here. Disgaea 4 Complete Plus is for PC is now available. I feel like Disgaea 4 before was available, and they took Disgaea 4 off of PC and then released the Complete Plus version, I guess. And it seems that Disgaea 3 is not available on Steam. And I have Disgaea 1 and Disgaea 2 is on sale, and I thought about buying it since I do have about $10 in store credit. But I thought, nah, this really isn't the time to buy a sequel to a game that I may play the first Disgaea game and say, oh, alright, well that was not that good. So I want to definitely make sure I'm making the best purchasing choices as possible. Next we have a game called A Monster's Expedition, which this seems like this is almost Steven's Sausage Roll. Well, no, it's a snowman is hard to build, which it definitely feels like that snowman game, which was too expensive. And this is also too expensive at $17.99. I don't know why these puzzle pushover games, when they're really nicely polished, do think they can sell themselves for such a high price, but it seems like they kind of get away with it too. So that there may just be such a niche audience that they have to raise the prices to make progress. This is an interesting idea of a giant overworld and it all being interconnected. So that there is a thought there. This is supported by a bunch of languages. I'll put it on the follow list and I'll give it some more thought.
Don't hurt me. Dancing in circles. Help me, fairies. No. Stay away. No.
Let's move on. I was just thinking about this the other day before this came out, so this didn't trigger this idea. We have a game here called Notre Dame de Paris Journey Back in Time. So much has happened now, and people treated the fire at the Notre Dame as such a big deal, and now I feel like I've almost completely forgotten it even happened. Like, so many other things have happened, so many worse things. Hundreds of thousands of people have died of a pandemic. This is from Ubisoft, which they had already made 3D models and scans in part for the Assassin's Creed series of Notre Dame, so it wasn't going to be particularly hard for them to make a more realistic version of that and put it out. So yeah, this is here from Ubisoft. It's positive, it's free to play. I don't think it's a bad idea. Does it use VR? No. This the Notre Dame was nearly destroyed in April 15th, so almost a year ago, and it took them a year to put it out, but I could put this on the wish list, certainly. Now, if I'm going to get incredibly critical, this is not the highest resolution looking 3D model of it, certainly, but it's definitely there. I personally don't think Notre Dame is that special. It's just a church. It's one of the biggest, most famous, most oldest churches, certainly, but it's still just a building, just a church. When you compare it to like the Great Wonders, if the Great Wall of China, for instance, it was completely destroyed, that might be a bigger deal. Although I imagine a lot of it has been destroyed and repaired. And things like that just happen. Old buildings break. That's what happens. Even modern buildings break, and either you repair them or you don't. And history to me is not a building or location. History to me, from a more modern perspective, is going to be the literature, the stories, the art, the things that people created to show. And when you have this new way of that the world works, where everything can be digitally recreated and saved, it's a much smaller loss when a building gets destroyed or paintings in the building gets destroyed. And there's definitely an overemphasis on Catholic churches and Catholic art and stories and things as being sacred, just literally sacred and sacrosanct. But when most people actually look at most of that stuff, they're fairly bored with it.
It won't be long now. No!
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Astronauts, which is mixed. It's tagged as an interactive sim. Yeah, I can see why people wouldn't be super interested in this. This feels like a game that you could have played in Windows 95 time. Looks like that. Early access, $15.99 English only. This is really one of those games also that does not look like it justifies being allowed to be in early access. I think we can probably go ahead and skip this. There's more than enough reviews. I don't think it's going to get drastically better. This, and this, and then more of those, and that. Checkcrypto has a review here. Tell me why his third episode, which apparently is already out, is the messy but earnest finale. Okay. Blah 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 blah. Let's see.
Shifting into Moonride. Ready, go!
There's no actual score here, or at least I'm not seeing a score. Maybe it's because I've got the ad blocker. It seems like I need to probably go and redo the ad blocker. They've changed their website layout a little bit. Tech Raptors take the weekly release schedule as helps keep discussion and discourse about the game's events fresh in players' mind. Memories are short, culturally speaking, and it helps every single installment settled before the next one arrives. If this becomes the new norm for Don't Nom's interactive dramas going forward, I'll gladly look forward to each and every one of them. So it was 3, important to mention there too, that it was, do I really need to do this, or can I just do like this and this, so I can just play that?
Hey, let's play.
Yeah, I don't even know if a weekly break really benefits anybody. I think they should just give up on the weekly releases and episodic releases, and they should just release the whole game in one go. I feel like we also are going to run into a scenario where there is probably
I did it! I won!
very little interest in Tell Me Why in a week or two from now. And that has done all of my daily quests. I'm surprised I got that far. We'll play 1 or 2 more games as we try to wrap up here. But yeah, I think there probably will be a lot of mainstream video game hype, which that's a phrase I haven't had to use in this stream so far, and I'm glad for it. But there'll probably be a lot of hype around it, and then it will be quickly forgotten. I feel like even the Life is Strange series pretty much had that same experience.
Time for me to prove myself.
Speaking of a game that kind of had a lot of hype, The Unfinished Swan is now available for PC and iOS. It's a first-person adventure game. I remember people being super hyped about it when it came out almost like a year or two ago. You know, like it came out for the PS4 October 2012. Wow, that is 8 years ago. And that certainly goes to show my memory of video games in the recent generation, where something like that can just be released and it's like a PlayStation exclusive, and it's just been a PlayStation exclusive. It's from the creators of What Remains of Edith Finch, but I think it may very well have come out before then, which I don't even know if I've played What Remains of Edith Finch. So I'm really far behind as far as games from that developer. Next we have a game on Steam, Legend of Zion Royal Story, which we can clearly see is an RPG Maker game. It's $5.39 English only, nothing of interest there. So I believe on Wednesday I tried to pronounce the name of Pocky and Rocky in Japanese and failed miserably. Apparently they're just going to call it in the West Pocky and Rocky 2021, and they have some more screenshots of it to show it to be more of an 8-bit type game that seems potentially playable, although it will still be severely Japanese, as you have the ghost umbrellas, which that's a ghost story in Japan, is that items after like 100 years of service get their own spirits, and then you have like ghost inhabited umbrellas and things. So yeah, there might be a game there that the West can embrace, but there's a high chance that the West won't be able to understand it or embrace it. Next we have a game called Cyber Fight Challenge, which looks like a boxing game. I'm always looking for something that could be like a Punch-Out game. The graphics don't look amazingly great, but they don't look awful either. So this is $9.99. Third-party account. World of OFC. Interesting. English full audio. $9.99. I'm gonna put this on the follow list and see what people say. Like, still, I'm definitely still looking for a good boxing game out there, and have yet to find one.
They're picking on me. Stay away.
Do I want to do this, or do I want to do this? That, and that. Then in the turn. Check Raptor's review for a game called Mask of Mists, which looks like it might be a match 3 game or tower defense game. Let's see what they. Actually looks like more of a puzzle adventure game. It doesn't look particularly well. Interesting. While it's too short to call epic, it's an excellent fantasy adventure. Just don't expect fun combat or a deep story. Wait, you gave it an 8.0, but don't expect fun combat or a deep story. Pros are fun exploration-based puzzle solving, Metroidvania style progression, pleasant light fantasy designs. Cons are dull combat and a disappointing final boss, and you gave it an 8.0. And visually this looks pretty bad. This would be a hard justification to put on the follow list. I definitely need a different reviewer, different reviewer's opinion on that one. Okay, here, and here, and then evolve here.
You're done for. Bad people are evil.
And
Stay away.
take that one out.
This bears further
And
study.
do that.
Let's play. Yeah.
And attack. Gamatsu has arcade shoot 'em up Rangok Skies being announced for PS4, Switch, and PC, due out in Q4 of 2020. See, do we have a video of what the shoot 'em up looks like? Probably looks like pretty much every other shoot 'em up. Yep. It looks like it's maybe zoomed in a little bit more, and it's very colorful and just gonna be very bullet hellish. And
Where I excel.
yep, there's not anything. Honestly, I don't even know what unique thing you could do that would convince me to play a shoot 'em up. They are just so outside my wheelhouse. Alright, let's go here. Gamma Sutra has an article. Assassin's Creed Valhalla bumps up its release date to match next-gen Xbox launches. Okay, it also, that means it will release a little bit earlier than the Cyberpunk 2077 release date, which I'm sure will help it too. Let's see, we have a score reward, old uprooted card pack ticket, and a few more basic animated cards. We have a game on Steam here called Bounty Battle, which is 15 reviews and it's already negative. It looks like it's probably a Smash Brothers clone, and it looks like it's probably not that good. It's $16.99, English full audio with a bunch of other languages. I'm going to stick it on the follow list to see if maybe there's just connection issues and maybe they could adjust that. But I bet, like so many other Smash Bros. Clones, there's really just not a lot helping it. And having to click several different times to get this to work. So here we go. We'll buy a World Uprooted. Next we have a game on Steam here called Tamarin, which looks like it might be a 3D puzzle platformer that's already mixed reviewed. I'll give it a follow, but once again, just like I said before, high chance not gonna get fixed. $39.99 is incredibly expensive, and it requires a controller. English full audio. That seems like it is asking a lot there. There's a higher chance I'll get something good here, but no guarantee. And I couldn't even tell you if any of these cards are new or not. So the best way to check for that would be to just come over to this part and see if we have 16 cards to liquefy. We have 15, so at some point I got one new card. And it's not worth going through the entire list to figure out what the one new card is. We should check to see if I have any other packs. I don't think I probably will ever get any packs for unlimited. It really feels like they should be giving out packs, tickets for these unlimited a lot more often than they do. But yeah, can't really call Shadowverse greedy. Little greedy like any collectible card game, but not amazingly greedy. And so it'll be like almost a day before these missions restart, and my best bet would be to just either re-roll this one and wait a day. Let's see. Yeah, in 40 minutes I could re-roll this that shows up in 133 minutes. An hour and 33 minutes. We have a game here on Steam called Micro Odyssey, which looks like an old game. It may not actually be an old game. It's $14.99, which is way too expensive. English full audio allegedly. I also think we have a dark background here because we're streaming in the evening, which is weird. But whatever. Gamma Sutra has an article here. A dark fantasy Metroidvania, Ender Lilies Quantus, has been announced. We already talked about this one, didn't we? So that's redundant. Here we have a game called Quantum Suicide. Again, another game with suicide in the name that I just don't know how I would play something like that as the title. Seems to me like it's a low effort visual novel. It's $14.99, fairly expensive. English and Japanese, full audio. But I just don't think there's enough here. The art style feels like it's trying to appeal to a Western audience, but maybe they had a Japanese animator in here, because there's a level of polish there that you typically don't see. Game of betrayal, deception, and romance. And has this developer put anything else out? No. So I could be super generous and put this on the follow list. Once again, though, it's mixed, and I seriously doubt there's enough of a justification that would ever improve that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hurry Up, which looks like a low effort collection of games. Let's see, $1.79. Yeah, nothing there. And I'm particularly hot right now. I've been messing with my air conditioning schedule, trying to stop a few points where I'm getting really cold, as it is getting colder in the fall. But also there's now, like, you set it one temperature, 1 degree one way, it's too hot. You set it 1 degree the other way, it's too cold. TechRaptor here has this article we talked about. The bottom of the stand can't be removed, which, okay, yeah, that makes sense. You can see that there are some airflow holes at the bottom. Fairly large airflow holes too. So we may have the cockroach problem with the Xbox Series X. You want to be careful. Where you could get like crazy ants that love to go towards electronics in the Series S. This is a fairly large hole, unless there's a filter, which honestly that wouldn't have been a bad idea if there was a slide out filter that you could dust on the bottom and top. But as for the actual bottom stand not being removed, and here they are showing that the air seems to be getting sucked in. Yeah, it's getting sucked in from the bottom, and cold air from the bottom, hot air being blown out the top. So there definitely should be a filter there, and hopefully that's a removable filter, but maybe not. Next we have a game on Steam called Challenge Speedball, which is just paintball. There might be an argument to this, although I think you might very easily find that this type of game is just not very interesting if you're not doing it in real life. And yeah, this is free to play, English only. It's online PvP. So if you like Speedball and you don't like Counter-Strike Go for some reason, which is effectively the same thing anyways, or any other first-person shooter that you could play online, check out Challenge Speedball. But almost certainly you'd have a better experience playing even something like Fortnite instead. Next we have a game called Neon Cyborg Cat Club, which sounds like it's probably an asset flip game. From the looks of it, just a lot of neon colors. We haven't seen too many games that are just large vomits of neon color. And you see a cat, but the actual trailer seems to not really show much here. It seems just like you play as a cat and you walk around and some things light up. Feels very low effort. $2.39 English full audio. Allegedly, at least. A new Baldur's Gate 3 multiplayer and Twitch integration details have been revealed, according to TechRaptor, so check out that argument if you're interested. I have no idea what's supposed to be going on there. I also don't even really remember the Baldur's Gate mythos. Like, I think it might have something to do with Dungeons and Dragons, or a spin-off to Kingdoms of Amalur or something, but I can't even remember. I think it's a spin-off of something, some other game series that's not even that popular anymore. Gamasutra has the same story. Apple pauses its plans to end sign-in with Apple support for Epic Games accounts, which, okay, we heard that. Gematsu has an article, Vigil the Longest Nights launches October 14th for Switch and PC, which this is another one of those like 2D dark, brimmy, probably Dark Souls like games out there. I would say the swing seems to be fairly wide on whether or not the video game industry is focused on making dark, edgy teen element games versus bright, colorful type of kid-friendly games. Honestly, I feel like there should be more variety, better mixed, certainly, as it were. There's too much trend following, too much copying that happens in video games. Here we have what I think is probably a gay troll game, but maybe it's just a pride game, as it were. where it's called Rose Seed Replica. It's 100% lesbian romance. All of this trailer has been talking about that, but then the graphics don't look that good, and yeah, see, if they're trying to tell a story, this may very well have been better done as a non-interactive experience, because as a book probably, because they just can't animate. $12.74 seems really expensive. English. Let's see. It's basically a visual novel, even though it's not being touted as that. Yep. This is one of the problems, certainly, of just potentially fetishizing LGBTQ people instead of just normalizing people. And I'm definitely more in the side of these relationships should feel normal and natural, and you shouldn't just have a game. I guess this is a point and click is what they're claiming, that is 100% built around that, because at the very basic level, any other argument set aside, people who make their entire personality based on whether they're gay or not are extremely one-note boring people. Stories that make their entire story around that are going to be extremely one-note and boring. Moving on, we have Blazing Sails Pirate Battle Royale, which, okay, why would you not play Sea of Thieves if you wanted something like this? We kind of did have the Year of the Pirate over the course of 2 years. There was definitely a lot of that being announced and shown. This is very positive early access. The question here would be, can you play the single player? And the answer is no. So there's no point for me putting it on the fall list. It will be funny if it turned out that Blazing Sails comes second to market and is way more popular somehow than Sea of Thieves. Although I think pretty much both concepts are doomed to fail. You just can't have a pirate game that is an online multiplayer game. It just won't have staying power. It'd be interesting if that did work, if it turned out that we could take half of the Counter-Strike Go first-person shooter games and turn them into pirate games. Sure, but that's not going to happen. The age of pirates and the love of pirate stories happened for decades, and then we had superheroes in comic books to replace them, and I don't think we're going to move from superheroes to something else anytime soon. And if it is something else, it's not going to go back to pirates. Before pirates, there was also cowboys and Indian stories, and yeah, they haven't really come back either. And certainly at a certain point there was just sci-fi stories. Moving on, we have Chronos Before the Ashes announced for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, PC, and Stadia from THQ Nordic and Gunfire Games. Can this trailer show me what is really going on here, or is it just going to show me an hourglass? I have no idea what this is then. Let's see, I would have to even look to see what Gunfire Games made before. Action role-player games in which players assume the roles of a fighter trying to save a land from a great evil. Okay. So, seems like it's gonna be kind of a RPG game that we really don't know anything about. Gamatsu has a dark turn-based strategy called Black Legend, announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. And see, now that we kind of know that the Series S is fairly different from the Series X, it may very well become a split problem where some games start announcing themselves specifically for the Xbox Series X only. And they really need to break this down to the XS X or the XSS, which almost certainly, if Microsoft follows the pattern, the next generation of Xboxes literally gonna just be called the XS, just to add more confusion. This is Black Legend. Okay, do we have a bit of a trailer to see it? Yeah, little teaser trailers. The graphics look fine, but they are completely empty. Yeah, looks like a Bloodborne type game. Black Legend might be based on the Black Knight. They might do well to change it to the Black Knight Legend. That way we don't run into a situation where there's a perceived racism in the game. And I had a couple tabs left open, so then that brings me to the Humble Bundle. So we can finally wrap up for today. We got all the daily quests done, so it must have been a fairly long stream. It looks like we might have a new bundle here under Super Simulation. So for $1 you get Treasure Hunter and 911 Operator, not a bad deal. And then, no, I feel like we had already seen this one. $9.07. Not the biggest bundle, but there's something there. And then looks like we might have a Tropico bundle that might be a good idea. Get Tropico 3 Special Edition and Tropico Reloaded for $1. Then pay more than the average of $8.13 to get a bunch of the other Tropico 4 DLC elements. I'm not sure Tropico is really worth playing, but that is a decent looking bundle. And if you haven't purchased any of the Tropico, going for the $12 bundle might be a good move. Although if you haven't played any of them, why would you think that you would want to play any of them? So that is always the problem with the Humble Bundles, is that are you willing to run that gamble and potentially just buy several things that you may never play and give to charity? It's not a terrible gamble though, but particularly in these unprecedented times, spending any money is let's see. Why am I following this person on Twitter? I'm going down my Twitter feed, so I got quiet there. I must have subscribed to something for some some contest, and now I'm getting a tweet that doesn't make any sense to me. I probably should do a Twitter cleanup and unsubscribe from a lot of or mute a bunch of the advertisements for equipment and giveaways and things. Although on the other hand, maybe I should just constantly enter contests trying to win more computers, because it's never gonna hurt. Like, I would have to be at the point of getting 3 or 4 free computers before I would start to run out of people that I could give a computer to, or parts of a computer that I could put to use. Yeah, there's a decent number of things. Like I literally could probably just give computers to random strangers at a certain point if I was winning so many of them. And getting something free, you can't be as picky, certainly. So the things I want to build when I build a computer, and the brands I want to use, which are mostly just Gigabyte brands with their ultra durability standards and series, I'm fairly picky on that stuff. Alright, so there's nothing on Twitter, and we did fairly well. We are still at a point here, though, where I need to come in here at some point whenever I find some free time. Even though I don't have any more daily challenges around this, I need to come and I need to clear this that's under maintenance that I can't play right now. And I suspect that there might be some other things that are under maintenance, but I've either already cleared them so they don't care, or they're going to put something under maintenance and make you go back and re-beat them. So it feels like probably some players got a much easier challenge on some of the story, and now that they've changed they're changing things under maintenance, seems like there is this possibility of the challenging being more difficult. Although it could be the exact opposite. I'm not sure. It could very well be that they're going and they're putting things under maintenance in a way that makes it easier. But yeah, I have 3 of these paths plus 1 of these paths that I need to beat, and we are still just kind of incapable of beating this final battle. And doing that would get me 150. Doing the other things will get me a couple hundred more of gold, but I'm not really gonna be up to like 20,000 gold or anything. It's all daily quests now, and as we are working through things, it's just all going to be about playing ranked, getting daily quests done, unlocking as much as possible. As far as the actual missions, we're just like 200 ranks with Forestcraft matches. It shows us that there's probably 400 or 500 ranked wins on the 5th tier to unlock more of that, and then there's still some things to get some vials, and let's see, reach 110 in rank in Forestcraft, which oddly that seems like that just is gonna happen over and over again. So maybe there is a level like 500 or something. We're slowly getting to the point where we're reach level 60, I guess, and have all the basic cards unlocked, and card pack tickets are going to become fewer and far between, and getting to like rank C3 would be our next goal, and then looking for like rank B0 would be the next flare after that. After you get to B0, you get to A0, then double A0, then Master. And I don't think we're getting there anytime soon. And then private matches also. That's another thing to focus on. And all of these will just kind of come eventually. And then each month, you just gotta keep on playing ranked and keep on playing ranked to try to get as much of this score and as much of these rewards as possible, with ideally getting up somehow, and I don't know how you'd actually ever get there, getting up to the maximum to get a legendary card pack ticket. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Wow, we only have been going 3 hours and 24 minutes. Boy, has it felt like four and a half. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.